Annabelle of Ankeny fans. This is Ruth Apollonia. This is going to be a little bit of a longer video because I'm going to do some explaining. But I wanted to start out with the two exciting bits of information. So the first is, some of you might know that the fourth book is out. So it's Lasting Word, the fourth book in the Annabelle of Ankeny series. It came out on February 9th, which is the feast day of St. Apollonia. It is available on Amazon. And the second exciting thing is that it is also available on my website. So my website is finally up and running now. So this has been a long process, and I know people have emailed me and asking me when the website is going to be up, and it's finally up now. So that's the second bit of information. So if you want to purchase signed copies through my website, you can do that. I do have it set up so that I'm only going to do it about once a month. So whatever orders are in there by the 10th, the start of the 10th of the month, then I will get them out hopefully by like the 15th or the 17th. So give me about a week to get it done because I do have a full-time job. So I'm doing this as a courtesy to you guys because people have asked me over the years how they can get signed copies, and usually I'm like, well, if you don't know me, then the best thing is to come to one of my book signings, and have me sign a copy there. So this is my children's book. It was put out in, I believe it was November 2016, and I have a very limited number of these copies. So anyway, it's available online as well on my website, ruthapollonia.com. Okay. So for the second part of this video, I wanted to kind of go into why it took so long for my website to get done. So that's what I'm going to talk about next. Thanks guys for sticking around to hear the reason it took me so long for the website to get up, and also a little bit longer for the fourth book to come out. So I would describe 2024 and the start of 2025 as like a year of loss for me. So it first started with my publisher, with Marion Press. So they had sent me an email in the summer or into spring 2024 saying that they've decided to pull out of the fiction market, and so that they weren't going to be publishing the fourth book. So I was suddenly, like, I lost my publisher, and I didn't know what to do, and so I was pursuing other avenues, trying to find other publishers, and there was another Catholic publisher that I was looking at, but a fellow author had told me that her book, she had one book that had just come out and then another one that was going to be coming out, but that one that was going to be coming out, it wasn't going to be able to come out until 2026 because they were so backlogged, and I was just like, that's too long. Like, there were some people that had been waiting on this book for 7 years because this was the book that was never been published prior. So Marion Press had republished the first 3 books, and then they were going to do this one, but anyway, so that didn't work out. So so it started with that, and then in the meantime I was looking into getting a new website. So there was a local website designer that I was looking into, but I didn't really have in my mind like what all the information I wanted to put on the website, so I felt like I couldn't just tell her, okay, let's go ahead and do this, because there were different packages. I didn't know how many pages I wanted, and that type of thing. And in the meantime, I also broke up with my boyfriend that I'd had for 2.5 years. So that's just kind of to add to this combination. But it did help me to start working on detachment, right? You attach to God, detach from everything else. And I also realized in this process, I'm like, okay, so this is like the second time that my rights have come back to me for my books. So I think God's trying to tell me something and to like keep my rights. So I decided to self-publish. So this book is self-published through Amazon on KDP. So that in itself was a whole lot of research and, finding out how to do that and, what to do for a company name, all that kind of thing. So I did a DBA, the Apollonian Arts Company is my publishing name now. Anyway, so that was a process, but I was working on detachment, right? And I came in probably November. Like I hit this point where it was really quite freeing, where I'm like, you know what? I really don't care what anybody thinks about me. As long as I'm doing what God wants me to do, I'm working on myself, working on my virtue. Like, I'm good. I don't care what anybody else has to say about me or to think about me or whatever. All that is important is what God thinks about me. Attached to God, detached from everything else. So then the end of November comes and my dad gets sick. So he ends up in the ICU, and I was up there that weekend, but I had to come back because I had a photo shoot for my website on that Monday of Thanksgiving break, that Thanksgiving week, which was Thanksgiving break, since I work for a hospital, but they have a contract with a school, so I work at a school. So I had to come back to my house for that. I live 3.5 hours away from where my father lived. So he ended up in the ICU, and then I was also cooking food for Thanksgiving, and so I didn't make it back up to the hospital until I think it was Wednesday when I went in there. So I went in there. My dad was, for one thing, when he had gone into the hospital, he was trying to pull out all the tubes and everything that they had put in him. So he had these mittens on, both hands. And so he was trying to get them off. So he was in there going like this, trying to get his mittens off. And so like that first day, he talked to me twice. I asked him if he was cold, and he said no. Not sure if it was true or not, because he felt cold. And then when I was leaving, I told him bye, and he said bye back. Other than that, he didn't talk. He opened his eyes like once or twice. But I mean, it was to the point where like the nurses were trying to get him to open his eyes, and he would be like clenching them shut, So then I go in on Thursday. One of my brothers comes with me, and this was the brother that would take my dad out to eat. And so it was like when he was there, it was time to go. So then my dad's like moving around in the bed, like trying to get up and leave basically, but he can't. But he's just moving around and like pushing himself down further in the bed and that kind of stuff. But still like not opening his eyes, not really answering. I don't think he even said anything to me on Thursday. I think Wednesday was the last day that he actually spoke words to me. On Friday, we all went to the ICU, and we had a priest come. My dad was not Catholic, so he couldn't, the priest couldn't give him um, anointing of the sick. He said the prayers, but he couldn't actually anoint him because he wasn't Catholic. But one of my brothers had gotten back from a trip to Europe and to like Fatima and Lourdes, and so he had some Lourdes water. So the priest blessed him with the Lourdes water, but he couldn't actually anoint him. So at that point we didn't really know what was going on. But as far as my dad's movement went, like he was still moving his arms a little bit. This was either Thursday or Friday, I don't really remember. But it was more like this. So it was either he was weaker or he was having seizures. I don't know. So eventually they decided, I think it was on Saturday, he got moved up a floor. So he was out of the ICU, but it wasn't because his condition was better. It was just because it wasn't like as acute, I guess, type of thing. So they moved him up a floor, and so I went, a brother and I went up as he was moved up, so we kind of saw his new room. So then Sunday morning comes, and I walk in there, and the first thing I notice is that his mittens were completely off. And I was like, oh no, that's a bad sign. No, and in the meantime, while all this was going on, they were talking to us about, what's wrong with him? How is he going to recover? Is he going to recover? What should be done? Should he be put on palliative care? What's going on? So I walk in there, his mittens are off, and I was just like, oh no. So I sit down on the little chair they have in there. I think it was more like a little sofa. And basically I'm just like looking at him and like crying, and I'm praying the chaplet of divine mercy for him, but still like crying, and like praying the rosary too, but crying. And the nurse comes in. She was very, very nice, and I'm watching them give him all this medicine, like this medicine to control his heart rate, giving him antibiotics, this kind of stuff. And the nurse, who was very kind, was like, look, I just want you to know, because if it was like my father or my grandfather, I would want to know what all is going on. And she said he had very little urine output, and there was something else she had said at the time, and I don't remember what. And I'm an occupational therapist, so like I know, I'm watching all this happen, and also I went up and I was like, can I open his eyes? There was no struggle. I could easily open his eyes. He was just there, like breathing, basically, was what he was doing. So I started texting my brothers, and I'm like, they're keeping him alive for us. Like, he is actively trying to die, and they're keeping him alive artificially for us. Like, I think it's time that we tell them to put him on palliative care. So we all kind of agreed. So I told them, I told the nurses, and so they called the doctor, and so eventually, they came in and started to unplug everything, and they were like, he'll wait down here until there's a room available up on the palliative floor. And I had, originally I had planned on going back home and like going to mass at noon on the way home. And so, I was like asking the nurse, do you think, like, can I go to mass and get back and he'll still be alive? Because I didn't want him to die alone. And I didn't want my brother to have to be there, because he was there with my mom, sort of. I think he was actually in the bathroom when she passed away. But anyway, I didn't want him to be alone with him, with my dad when he passed. So anyway, she's like, yeah, you have enough time to go to mass and come back. So I did that, and when I came back, he was still in the same room, but it wasn't very long, and they moved him up to the palliative care unit. So we went up there, and so one thing is, like, I'd watched him all morning, basically like breathing really like that type where it was kind of like a struggle, and I thought, he's just trying to get a good breath. It's just getting hard for him or whatever. And like my brother had asked, like, are they gonna put him on morphine? I was like, well, if he's in pain, but he's not in any pain, like he's just laying there, And when the nurse came in and looked at him, she was like, explaining all this kind of stuff, and she's like, and we'll give him some morphine for the pain. And I was like, wait, what pain? And she's like, well, the way he's breathing, that is actually a sign of pain. And oh my goodness, I kind of lost it, because like I had watched him for hours that morning, like breathe like that, and I didn't know that was pain, And of course, as Catholics, we believe in redemptive suffering, and we can unite it to the cross of Christ, and it does a world of good for the souls in purgatory, for whoever we're doing it for ourselves, but still. To think, like, I'm not sure how much of a choice my dad had in that, because like cognitively I'm not sure like where he was. I think when he was in the ICU, he kind of thought he was at home, because he was kind of acting it like the way he would lay on the sofa and he'd have his feet off the edge of the sofa, like that's what he was doing in his hospital bed. So I think in his mind, like, he was at home, but anyway, that was just kind of, oh my goodness, he was in pain this whole time and I had no idea. So she gave him some morphine, and his O2 stats actually got better, and so that was good to see, that it went from like from like the 70s up into the 90s again. I was like, oh, that's good to see, And so basically, we were just waiting there, and eventually my brother and my aunt left, because my aunt had to meet one of her granddaughters, and my brother had brought her, so he had to take her. And then my other brother was planning on spending the night there with my dad, so he was going home to get something to eat. So I had asked the nurse to keep the monitors on and just turn off the noise, because I can't stand the noise. I'm very auditorily sensitive. So she did that. And so I pulled my chair up right next to him, and because she's like, just talk to him. He can hear you. Just talk. So I was doing that, and then I start looking at his monitors, and so like the oxygen status flashes red, and so like I text my brother. I'm like, so we're gonna eat at the house, or are you gonna bring it here and eat? He was like, well, I was planning on eating at the house. Why? I'm like, I think maybe you need to bring it, because it's looking. You're like, I think you need to bring it. And before he had left, we had this discussion with the nurse, because she had worked worked in hospice, and she had worked in palliative care, and she like floated all over the hospital. She was actually in his room on the other floor the past night, helping his nurse out. So she had said, she was really good at explaining to us like basically the dying process and what happens with the body and that type of thing. And she had said, a lot of people that die in the hospital, they get this like grayish look. And then there's also like this waxy look that she says they sometimes get. And she was like, he's not close to that type of thing. So I think because of that, my brother's like, okay, well, it's okay to go. Like, he's not close. He's going to hang on, So I see the oxygen status flash red, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. So although I had prayed the Chaplet of Divine Mercy for him every day at the hospital, and I had already prayed it that day for him, I jumped up, I got my rosary beads, and I started praying the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And and in the meantime, like texting my brothers, because I'm watching his pulse rate go down, and the oxygen status go down, and the nurse had told me that eventually what happens is that the pulse oximeter doesn't work because the fingertips won't be getting blood supply, because the body will conserve all the blood for the internal organs, and there's a certain look that happens to the fingers and stuff, and so and at some point it will stop working because it won't be able to read it, and so it stopped working. And so anyway, so I'm praying the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, and his breathing kind of changed. It kind of actually relaxed a little bit, like he opened, or maybe it was he closed his jaw, something like that. And so that changed, but then it was like when I got really close to the end of the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, it was like there was this struggle, and it was like his shoulders were involved. It was like he was just trying to get some oxygen type of thing, and it was like just like 5 little like that type of thing, and then he went quiet and didn't move, and I was like, is he dead? I don't know, and I put my hand on his chest to see if I could feel his chest moving. But I had come to the end of the Hail Mary beads, and so then I started into the the closing prayers of the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And when I finished the final closing prayer, there was one last breath, and then nothing. And so I sat there kind of waiting, because people that are dying, they have agonal breaths, and they aren't it's not symmetrical, it's not rhythmic, and so I was just like, was that it? I don't know. And I had asked the nurse before, if I think he has passed away, what should I do? And she said, put on the call light, I'll come in and I'll check. So I put on the call light, and I was just sitting there waiting. I had my hand on his chest to see if I could feel movement, and I'm like, I don't think he's breathing, and it was probably a good 2 minutes when I was like, I think he's dead, So I went out to the nurse's station, and she was actually right there, and I said, I think he's dead, and there was this moment of hesitation with her, because I think, she was thinking, I was just in there 40 minutes ago. He was not close to death, So there was like this moment, but then, she pushed herself away and got up. And so she came in and she listened to his heart, and she said, well, his heart is still fluttering, but he is gone. And so I was in the process of texting my brothers, and then she said, and it stopped. So, so my dad died on December 1st, and I was alone with him, but I'm fine with that. I got to say the Chaplet of Divine Mercy as he was literally dying. So that was the first major loss of a person that I experienced. Let me rephrase that I had experienced that year, in this year of loss that I'm talking about, because my mom had passed away in February of 2022, and then my aunt had passed away in January of 2024. But that was the first one. So in the meantime, my priest at the parish that I attend, he was going to have to leave because of his visa. Thankfully, he was able to get a student visa, and he was going to a university to study education or something like that, so he could stay in the country. So I was very thankful he didn't have to go back to Nigeria, where the priests are being kidnapped and killed. But the fact, he had been there for 5 years, and he was leaving. So it was I lost my dad, and then I was losing my parish priest. But I still had my spiritual director. So during this time, I had decided, I hired someone to make my website, and because I waited so long, she had gotten a couple other websites she had to do in between, so that pushed back when she could start on mine. And then I had also decided to self-publish my book, and I put February 9th as my goal, because that is the feast day of Saint Apollonia. So January comes, and I go to see my spiritual director, and I actually was able to get my proof copy there, and I hadn't gone through it yet, but I took it there to show him, just to be like, hey, look, it's coming, it's gonna be here soon, and he actually he wanted to take it and to read it, because he loved my books. But I was like, oh no, I have to read it. I have to see if there's mistakes in here, and it's my proof copy, and I had written some discussion questions for the first book that I'm going to put up on my website, and I wanted him to look through them and to see what he thought, just give me any suggestions, anything like that. And so he kept those, so that he could have more time to look at them and to do a thorough, a thorough examination of the questions and that kind of stuff, things he thought I should change or whatever. So I left the copies there with him, and that was on a Saturday. By Friday, I hadn't heard anything from him, and so I texted him around, I think maybe 4 o'clock, and was like, hey, I'm just wondering if you got a chance to look at the questions. And I didn't hear anything from him. And then I get a text message from someone else that is in the Jefferson City Diocese, because he was actually up in the Jefferson City Diocese, which is not the diocese I'm in. And she said, my spiritual director was Father Cordy, and she said, did you know Father Cordy died? And I was like, what? Like, I just saw him on Saturday. So I saw him 6 days beforehand. And I will say the whole time that I went to see him, I knew that he had cancer, that he was fighting it, and there were times when he had surgery but had recovered from that type of thing. But when I went to see him in January, he didn't look any different or act any different from the way he usually did. So I had no idea, though I had this thought back in December when my dad had died and my parish priest was leaving. I just had this thought of, well, what if Father Cordy dies too? Like, Father Cordy would die too, and then I'd have like no fathers, But I completely just like pushed that away. It was like a fleeting thought. It's like, nope, I'm not entertaining that idea, So when I went to see Father Cordy, I literally sat there and thought, well, at least I still have Father Cordy. And then 6 days later, he was dead. So I think he got the flu, and because of his underlying issues, he just couldn't kick it, and he ended up in the hospital, and he ended up passing away. So that was like a really big blow, because like I saw him as my help, not only like spiritually, but like for my books as well, and for the questions, because this is only for the first book. I haven't done questions for the other books yet. Like, I plan to, but I just haven't got to them. But I wanted to bounce them off of him, get his suggestions, his ideas. And that's just gone. Like that support system is just gone. So that was another loss. Loss number 2 in January. So February comes, and I do successfully get this book out. So it was available February 9th. Because my website was being worked on and the old emails weren't working, I couldn't send out a newsletter. So I wasn't able to tell very many people via the news. I couldn't tell anybody via the newsletter. I put it on Facebook, and I think I put it on Instagram. But anyway, I couldn't really advertise it much. But honestly, at that point, I was just happy. I met my goal, and I got it out on February 9th. So that was my goal. So I think February 9th was a Monday, and I think February 14th, Valentine's Day, was a Friday. So that Sunday after Valentine's Day, I hear that my uncle, who, if you remember, I had said that my aunt passed away in January of 2024. So this was her husband of like 30 years, something like that. My uncle decided that life wasn't worth living, and he pulled a trigger. So that was the third death in 3 months. And I didn't realize at the time, I think it probably took me until March to realize how I was coping with all these things. And how I was coping with them was, okay, what do I need to do next? What is the next thing? It was one thing at a time. And the website was way at the bottom. Like, didn't really care about the website whatsoever. It was like, okay, I got it. This at work, this with OCIA, this with whatever. It was just one thing at a time. And the website was at the very, very bottom. In the meantime, we also had some weather issues where I live. We had tornadoes, and then we had flooding, and then we had more tornadoes, and so that kind of affected the lady that was working on my website. It kind of affected that. So that's what I've been dealing with. So my dad died in December. My spiritual director died in January, and then my uncle committed suicide in February on Valentine's Day. So I've finally met with the lady that's doing the website, and we're getting it out there, and so now it is available. So you can order, if you want a signed copy of Lasting Word, you can do that through the website under I think it's shop or store or something like that, and then you can also find the discussion questions for the first book. There is a behind the scenes with different videos that I've shot. There's pictures that I took when I knew my dad was in the ICU and he wasn't doing well, and that was another reason that it was like I didn't even like to look at my website, because I knew when those pictures were taken, like I knew my dad was in the ICU. I didn't tell the photographer or the website designer at the time, but it was like looking at those, it's like it just like brought up his loss again, type of thing. But anyway, it is out there now, and so you can go check it out. And I might do a little video of like navigation, what all you can find on there. If you guys want me to do that, let me know, like comment below. All right, thanks guys. As far as the 5th book goes, I am working on it. It has been very slow. It's a very slow process, given everything I've just told you. But I am working on it a little bit at a time. All right, thanks guys. I hope you enjoy the book. I hope you enjoy the whole series, and if you can rate and review it, I would love that. Thank you so much. Bye.